When you look at the pitching pool for Monday night's MLB DFS slate, you're going to see Shohei Ohtani at the top facing Colorado and think it's going to be this super easy slate where we know what to do a pitcher. And I would love to come on here and say, not so fast. We've got some other guys to consider for today. Maybe it's not Ohtani as a top option. The problem is I can't do that because I feel like it really is just as obvious as it seems with Shohei Ohtani being the top guy for tonight. So we will talk about some other options at pitcher, but it's basically going to be all about Ohtani. And then our goal for the stacks will be to identify players and teams that can help us afford his salary at $11,000. Let's do that right now for today. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to break down Monday's 7-game main slate with lock set for 7:05 for tonight, and thankfully no weather in the forecast for today. There is some wind out at Target Field for the Twins and the Tigers, but that is the one thing for today. Should be a pretty clean slate from a weather perspective, so all good to go for tonight. Do not forget, once again, that we are back here once again, 4 p.m. Eastern, the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages. Swing by there to take your questions about tonight's slate, whether you're pitching, stacks, one-offs, MLB DFS process. We are there. The FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages, 4 p.m. Eastern, each and every weekday. Also, this week on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, the PGA is not in action this week. We do the Olympics. We're going to talk about the Men's Olympics contest, myself and Brandon Gadula, from a DFS perspective. That is tomorrow, 10 a.m. on YouTube, and up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed after that. So make sure you're subscribed there, but also check us out. And if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review. Hey, baseball fans, we're getting close to the trade deadline and all these teams back in action. FanDuel is giving you a chance to win while watching your favorite teams. All you have to do is place a 5+ leg parlay on an MLB game. If you hit all legs except for one, you get up to $25 back in site credit. All games up until the end of July are eligible with a $25 max site credit. Head over to the FanDuel Sportsbook today and create your very own MLB parlay. Must be 21 plus and present in Colorado, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, or West Virginia. Max site credit $25. Restrictions apply. See full terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Colorado, 1-800-522-4700. In Iowa, 1-800-BETS-OFF. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. For confidential help in Michigan, 1-800-270-7117. In Tennessee, call the Red Line, 1-800-889-9789. Or in West Virginia, 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Pitching preview for this Monday main slate, Shohei Ohtani, obviously the top option for tonight. He checks in at $11,000 on FanDuel. He's facing off with German Marquez, and Marquez actually second in salary at 10-2, with Luis Garcia facing the Mariners at $10,000. Wade Miley is $9,600. Then Kyle Hendricks is $8,700, and the only other pitcher at $8,000 or higher. And with Ohtani, it's obvious. He's in an elite matchup. I'm not going to turn him down here, even at $11,000. And as much as I would love to give you alternatives, I can't. I can't put anyone else in his tier for tonight. He's facing the Rockies. They have a 70 WRC plus against righties, but that's overall. But they have been especially terrible on the road this year. So the 70 mark may actually undersell how bad this offense is, and that's the worst mark on the slate by 21 percentage points. So it's the best matchup you can have. And it seems like Ohtani, shocker, can take advantage of that. He's been changing things up recently. He's been throwing fewer splitters and more sliders over his past 5 starts, which could be a concern, but he has not had any issues thus far. He has a 3.91 skill interactive ERA with a 26% strikeout rate. And that's despite having a lot of tough matchups, because 3.91 skill interactive ERA, 26% strikeout rate are not like elite, but part of it's due to matchups. He faced Boston, Oakland, another team in there, all top 11 in WRC plus versus righties. This time it's a lot easier facing the Rockies. Ohtani is going deep enough in games as well, because he's gone 6+ innings in all but one game in that stretch. He went more than 100 pitches once, hit 96 his last time out. So it doesn't seem like there have been super long-lasting effects from the All-Star break. It seems like there is enough here to feel good about him, and the matchup does the rest. So yes, it's costly, And yes, he will be very popular for tonight, but he should be. So I think that Shohei Ohtani has to be number one on this slate. I think he's in a tier of his own. There is another guy who I think is like kind of viable, but I do think that Ohtani, to me, the no-brainer top pick. I'd love to be contrarian. I'd love to, go out on a limb and say, go somewhere else, but I can't. It's just Ohtani as the number one option for today. Now, Luis Garcia is not as good on the road as he is in Houston, and that does limit him a bit here tonight. That's why I can't put him quite in the Ohtani tier, but he does have a good matchup, and he's not terrible on the road. He does get downgraded, he's not terrible. So I think that Luis Garcia is the number two option behind Ohtani for tonight, and I am very willing to use Garcia. I just can't dub him as being the top guy above Ohtani. We've been seeing a lot of pitchers taking steps back recently, whether it be to fatigue, sticky stuff, whatever it may be. But Garcia's been getting a bit more interesting. The velocity is up a decent amount for him over his past 5 starts, and he has been outstanding in that time. He has a 3.59 skill interactive ERA with a 30% strikeout rate, and both those numbers are better than Ohtani in his respective departments. We did see Garcia get 8 strikeouts twice and 7 in another in this time, so that's very good. The lone problem is that just one of those those 5 starts came on the road. And he was fine in that start. He let up 2 runs across 6 innings, and that was against Detroit. He's been playing good baseball recently. They've been better than the Mariners offense, so he will face tonight. They have a 91 WRC plus and a 26% strikeout rate. It is also the best park factor for pitching on the slate. So, yeah, I do downgrade Garcia when he's on the road relative to when he's at home. Most pitchers in Houston have a bit more extreme home road splits because strikeouts get a bump in Houston. So I do downgrade him. It still feels like he should be second on this list behind Ohtani, but I would put him like a tier behind Ohtani. It's not like a 2-tier thing, but it's like I feel very good about Ohtani, and then I would put Garcia second for tonight. So it's Ohtani 1 in a tier, Garcia second. German Marquez would rank third for me, but he's in the upper edges from a salary perspective. So I think that for me, if I'm looking at things realistically, I would say I just want to use those 3. Ohtani, Garcia, and then maybe Marquez as being like the third guy. Nobody else on this slate moves the needle for me. I want to keep it to those 3 for me personally, but we just run through a value play here on the solo shots. If you forced me to pick someone else, I would go Dallas Keuchel, though I want to be clear and transparent that I won't be using him tonight unless we get absolute calamity with scratches later on. The reason I would go to Keuchel as the top the top value play for tonight is that he's the best real-world pitcher on this slate. He's gone back to his cutter over his past 8 starts. The fly ball rate is 29%, ERA 3.80, and that's with some tough matchups in that time. And he's overcome those tough matchups. He had 8 strikeouts against the Blue Jays. He had 6 against the Twins before they traded Nelson Cruz, so that was a tough matchup. He had 5 against the Rays. And he's facing the Royals tonight. Not a good team versus lefties. They have a 94 WRC plus versus lefties with a 154 ISO. They don't walk all that much, and that's why I think that Keuchel could pitch well here, and that's why I would rank him highest among the non-elite options for today. I won't use him because I don't think he has the strikeout upside, so take that how you will. If your process is to spend out a pitcher, Keuchel is your best option down there. My process is to maximize the expected points from that position because it's more predictable. I can find upside more easily in lower salaried hitters. So to me, I want to maximize pitching points, and Keuchel won't do that for me. So play this how you will, but that's my thoughts on it. Where to me, my pitching pool tonight will be Ohtani, followed by Garcia, followed by Marquez, and that's likely going to be it for me. So Keuchel's the top value, but not a guy I personally want to use for today. So with that said, let's move now to stacks. And because I am so high on Ohtani, we do have to focus a lot on identifying teams we can stack that will still allow us to use Ohtani at $11,000 for tonight. Weirdly enough, the Astros actually do fit in this discussion. They still have Yordan Alvarez, Jose Altuve, and Kyle Tucker at $3,600 or higher, but the rest of the guys here are pretty low salaried. You can stack them on an Ohtani slate, and I would like to do so for tonight. They are facing Darren McCacken. He is making his second big league appearance, and the first one did go pretty well for McCacken. He allowed just 1 run in 5 innings, but the underlying numbers were a bit more troubling there. He had no strikeouts compared to 3 walks. That happened in Colorado, so it was a tougher environment, but it also means he was facing the Rockies lineup, so that helps. Now, he has to face the Astros. A little bit different than the Rockies. In AAA, McCacken had a 19% strikeout rate with a 5% walk rate, which means he projects to let up a lot of balls in play. Not an overwhelming ground ball rate for him either in AAA, so you put it all together, he has the kind of profile we want to stack against, where he's going to let up a lot of balls in play, not be a big ground ball guy, and that's what we want. And it happens to be against a team that we do want to stack for today. So I think the Astros are the top option on the board, and the value should be there to help you get to Ohtani, because Abraham Toro is $2,300. He'll probably hit 7th. Carlos Correa, still has a 235 ISO against righties, is $2,900. He is in a pretty massive slump, but he's still making hard contact. He's striking out too much. So that is an actual legit concern with Correa right now. But McCacken, not a big strikeout guy. I think that Correa will snap out of this cold streak soon. And I would not be shocked if it's tonight against a lower strikeout guy. So I'd plug in Toro and Correa, and then potentially Michael Brantley or Yuli Gurriel. Prefer Brantley between the two. And you should have enough salary to get in at least one of the high upside guys there between Tucker, Altuve, and Alvarez. I think you can get at least one of them in there if you use those value plays. And I think that's the way I want to play things for tonight. Using those value plays on the Astros in order to get one stud and use Ohtani as my pitcher. As far as the second stack, it's an interesting one if you listen to the solo shot this year, because I've actually used Mike Minor in DFS, I think two or three times potentially this year. And it was a while ago, admittedly, and things have not been going as well for him recently. So I think we can stack against him tonight with the White Sox. Minor seems to have been impacted by the sticky stuff discussion. His strikeouts started to decline back on June 15th, which is a couple weeks after it was first known this was coming. And he hasn't really rebounded since. He's let up a lot of earned runs in this time. And it does seem like he's tinkering, because Minor has been lowering the usage on his changeup over his past 4 starts. It's not working. His skill interactive ERA is 5.28 with a 15% strikeout rate. He's let up a 42% hard hit rate with a 44% fly ball rate. Now, it hasn't led to a ton of dingers yet. He has not let up multiple home runs in a game since June 5th. But the building blocks are there. Fly balls, hard contact, low strikeout rates, plenty of barrels. That's what we want to look for. Hasn't led to home runs yet, but I think that it will in the very near future. And that's not a recipe that will work very well against a White Sox team that absolutely thumps lefties. So I feel pretty good about them here, despite the fact that Minor is not like an obvious guy we want to stack against, but I do think that the White Sox make a lot of sense, and it helps we can get to them with Eloy Jimenez coming off the IL for today. Now, I will mention Jimenez in his AAA stint didn't show a lot of power, so Jimenez himself might not be a guy I flock to necessarily right away. I'm interested and will use him, but he might not be at the top of my stacking list for today. My hope is that with Jimenez coming back, we still get Adam Engel somewhere in the lineup, because Andrew Vaughn and Engel are the two value plays here for trying to get to Ohtani. Both those guys, $2,800 or lower. Vaughn has a 316 ISO against lefties. Engel is a small sample guy, but he's hit for some power, and I think that there is enough there to expect it to continue. So we can stack those guys with Ohtani, and I would like to do so. Vaughn and Engel, the keys to making it work. So hopefully when Jimenez comes back, they have Engel play the outfield, maybe give Brian Goodwin a day off versus a lefty, because I do think that Engel makes a lot of sense here, and he is a value play who can make it easier to get to Ohtani. So check the lineup once it's out. Be excited about Jimenez coming back. But then, hopefully we do get to use Vaughn and Engel as being value plays for today. As far as our third stack, the Red Sox are pretty similar to the Astros, and honestly, they're similar to the White Sox too, where we have the studs. We have Jose Abreu, Tim Anderson. We have Jose Altuve. We've got JD Martinez here, Rafael Devers, et cetera, et cetera. The studs, super high salaried. But there are some mid-range and value plays on both, and I think the overall teams are good enough and the value plays are good enough. We can stack those teams and go with Ohtani leaning on the value here. The Red Sox do have that value, do have those mid-range guys, and I want to roll them out here against Thomas Hatch. Hatch is making his first start of 2021 in the big leagues, and he's been very good in AAA, 2.15 ERA. The problem is that the advanced numbers are not as glowing as a 2.15 ERA would suggest. He has just a 4.88 xFIP down in AAA with a 24% strikeout rate and a 10% walk rate. That's not necessarily dominant stuff. A lot of times when guys outperform their expected numbers, outside of it just being a small sample, is that it'll be due to batted balls, where there'll be an outlier in the batted ball department. And it's possible Hatch is getting a lot of weak contact because his ground ball rate is 49%. That is kind of high. So that's why the Red Sox are third on the stacking list as opposed to second. For example, I wanted the White Sox above them, in part because of that reason. Not a ton of film on Hatch, although he was in the big leagues last year. But he will likely let up balls in play, and the Red Sox have some boppers. So I think we can be into them here, despite the fact that it's not a perfect stacking profile, due to the potential for Hatch to be a guy who does excel in the batted ball department. Now, stacking the Red Sox means we get to use Jarren Duran, which is pretty fun to me. We don't have a big sample on him yet, but he at least doesn't look overwhelmed. And that's what I want to look at in a small sample of the guy coming to the big leagues is, are they getting worked at the plate? The strikeout rate for Duran is 29%. It is a bit high, but it's not a massive red flag. It's in line with what you would have expected based on his AAA numbers, and he's hitting the ball hard. Of the 13 balls in play he has had, 7 of those have been hard hits. So an exit velocity of 95 plus miles per hour. And that makes sense too, given all the power he showed in AAA, and given he was kind of a high strikeout guy there too. He's $2,600. That's a value play. Alex Verdugo has slid back a bit this month with less power, but not a big deviation from where he was before. I would say Hunter Renfroe is a priority above Verdugo. He's $3,100. No concerns with his power. So I would say the Red Sox are similar to the Astros, where you build around the value plays like Duran, kind of Renfroe, and then maybe the Verdugo in order to get to at least one stud, potentially 2, while using Ohtani as your pitcher. So all 3 of those teams, I think, should work when you are using Ohtani at pitcher for today. Let's move now to things to watch. Talk about one more pitcher. I would typically be in on Joe Ross for tonight, but I have no idea what the pitch count will be. He's coming off the IL. He had a couple of bullpen sessions, but did not make a rehab start. This is the first start for Joe Ross since July 4th. So it's not a super long layoff, but it's an elbow injury, and it's still 3 weeks since he last pitched. So if I were projecting a pitch count for Ross, I mean, this is a big range, but it'd be somewhere between 60 to 80 pitches tonight. That's a wide range, and the top end is not enough for me for DFS. So hopefully Ross goes long enough where we can use him next time out in stacks. I love Joe Ross. He was pitching so well before. I'd love to be back here, but for tonight, he is a no-fly zone due to pitch count. The Twins did lose a lot of pop with the Nelson Cruz trade and with Alex Kirilloff going on the IL, but I'm not against stacking the leftovers here against Matt Manning. Manning was really good last time out, but he still has a 5.49 skill interactive ERA over his past 4 outings. He has an 11% strikeout rate in that time, so letting up a lot of balls in play. So I think the Twins make sense, both for one-offs or for stacking. Mitch Garver specifically is $2,500. Just came off the paternity list. He has hit for a ton of power versus righties this year, so I'm very good to load up on Garver when trying to save salary, whether at catcher / first base or at utility for tonight. Finally, Spencer Howard is making another start for the Phillies today. It's against the Nationals, and Howard doesn't let up a ton of balls in play, so I'm not like itchy to stack against him, but I'm fine with it. He can let up long balls, and he can, let up walks, which means the long balls can lead to big innings. So the fact that he doesn't let up a ton of balls in play combined with a mediocre lineup right now makes it harder for me to prioritize the Nationals, but I do think that they are in play for today. Speaking of the Nationals, let's go to our dinger calls for today, and the boring one will be Juan Soto. Soto has had this majestic stroke since the start of July. Hopefully the home run derby has helped him unlock that power swing once again. It's been great. Howard does let up impactful contact when he lets up balls in play. Soto, not a big strikeout guy. So of the boring options, I do think that Juan Soto is a pretty solid one for today. As far as the fun ones, I want to go back to the White Sox and go with Andrew Vaughn. Once again, a very different hitter versus lefties as opposed to righties. Just a lot more power. He's kind of like Yuli Gurriel in that sense, where don't really want to go there against righties, but very, very, very in on him against lefties. He gets that today in Mike Minor. So home run calls for today will be Juan Soto and Andrew Vaughn. As always, get your dinger calls in later on during the MLB Q&A. That's on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages. Swing by there, 4 p.m. Eastern time today, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, and get those dinger calls in, but also ask your questions about tonight's slate. Don't forget to subscribe to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. If you have any questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcasts. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. I hope you had a fantastic weekend. Good luck tonight. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow. This has been the solo shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.